All right, guys. Thank you for joining us. We're here at the Open Source 101 event in Charlotte. I'm Mark Hill Samuel. I'm joined by Swarna
Podila.
Podila. Okay. Thank you for joining me, Swarna.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, Swarna, for those who don't know her, she's the product marketer and marketing leader at
Myself.
Wow,
Yep,
okay.
real.
So she's a freelance product marketer and marketing leader. Today she talked about the mystical nature of open source marketing.
Yep.
So this will be a very different kind of talk because we're not going super technical here, but we need to talk about specifically marketing or marketing projects and things like that. So let's just dive right in. So let's kind of start with you. So, who are you? What led you into open source? And why is open source kind of a focus for you?
Sure. So I'm an engineer turned marketer. I was briefly an engineer for probably a few years at the beginning of my career. Turned into a product marketer, and now I do all things marketing. My first entry into open source was, I want to say, about 8 or 9 years ago with OpenStack.
Oh, wow.
OpenStack. It gave me a great way to learn and contribute to the community. It was the first time I understood how to work as a community, even with some of our competitors back in the day. So the idea of collaborating with your competitors to benefit the community and not just your company was something that was very compelling and unique for me. So that was the primary point or the inflection point for me to get drawn towards the open source world. And the more that I get involved in the open source communities, whether it's CNCF or just the Kubernetes or any other communities, it still is the same collaboration theme that I see consistently across everywhere. And I think it has also been the theme of the day here for pretty much every session, focusing on the collaboration.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's an important part. People are your crop, right? So there you go. What are some common misconceptions about open source marketing? There are many, of course, as you know.
Oh boy, where do we begin?
Yeah.
One of the biggest pet peeves, as I call it, is when people start with an open source project. They're like, oh, we need to share this with the bigger, broader community. Let's just get adoption, get people to talk about it, try it out. And, let's start selling it because we need to make money out of it.
Right.
Or here, all the documentation pieces or the certifications we have built around, or the tutorials that we have built around it, around our project. And then suddenly the leadership comes and asks you, how many leads did we generate? So it's understanding where is our open source marketing journey heading, what is the priority and what is the end goal or objective for us, and how do we separate that out with the enterprise goals and objective. At the end of the day, we're all businesses and we're all trying to make money and build a successful and a viable business out of it. I mean, look at Red Hat, right?
Exactly.
Has done a phenomenal job. So it's kind of like understanding where to focus and when to focus on open source marketing versus enterprise marketing.
Wow. That's valuable.
Yeah.
Why do you think the topic of marketing, and I know you talked about how it's overlooked and undervalued, but why do you think it's undervalued? Like, where did that come from?
We built a great product. Why do we need marketing? People buy it by themselves. That has been the saying that I've heard, the statement that I've heard from literally the first day of my marketing career. Oh, we built a great product. What does marketing have to do anything with it? The product sells by itself. And as I work on open source products a lot more, like open core products where we sell an enterprise version of the product, I cannot tell you the number of times I get asked, our open source project is very successful. So what do you do as a marketer in this company? The project itself is successful. Like, why do you need to be there? It's undervalued in the sense that marketing does a very unique job. A couple of questions that I got in the session that I just did was, how does analyst relations and press relations play into this whole marketing of an open source project? One target audience that we're always trying to reach is, whether it's developers or networking engineers or security engineers, like the technical audience that we're trying to reach. The other audience is the people who talk about it, who write about these things. Could be analysts, could be journalists, could be influencers, could be technology experts, like industry experts. And part of the marketing function is to reach out to those key individuals, give them an introduction to our product so that they can write our product, enterprise product, commercial product, or an open source project, and then have them write an article about it so that their audience can now read about our project or our initiative from their lens and their thoughts. they also, that kind of constant loop of conversations or briefings or interactions with the journalists, with the analysts, with the key influencer community also feeds into building a product that's built for tomorrow and not just for solving the problem for today.
That's correct. That's so true. And I know there are multiple different audiences that we could talk. We can go on and on and on about tools and tactics.
Yep. How long do you have?
Right. Yeah. But I specifically want to focus in on, say I'm making an open source project and I want to monetize it one day, right? What are some super high level, what is kind of not tools and tactics, but like what's the frame of mind that I should be going into my project with in order to market it and like building a brand, I guess, on it? So at a high level, I know we can go on and on and on.
The first and foremost thing is about figuring out your audience. Like, are you trying to target an application developer, platform engineer, or a networking engineer, or a security engineer? Figure out what's the problem statement that you're trying to answer with your project. Who's that target audience that will resonate very quickly and get you to a point quickly where they start adopting or using your project. That's understanding your core persona and building your messaging or narrating your value to that persona. Once you get that, see if there is a inherent need for enterprise features or features that you can then sell to that audience. So separate out the core problem that you're trying to solve, or in HashiCorp's language, one of my former employers, what's the workflow that you're trying to solve? And then see if there is an enterprise workflow or enterprise feature set, like a track, that you can then sell and build a monetizing or a viable success out of it.
Bro, that's awesome. That's awesome. Kind of another question that I wanted to go into was, within your space and within your community, what's the value of having conferences like this? What's the value of hearing different talks and speeches, and like what's the value that you take from events like Open Source 101?
There's a huge value. First and foremost is connecting with the people in the community. As I said, OpenStack and then CNCF communities have taught me how to participate in open source communities. And coming into the Open Source 101 or all things open types of events is also meeting new people, learning from others. Like, these are some of the, I have to be honest, this is my first time coming into attending Open Source 101, and there isn't a single person here that I know that I have met before. Wow. Every single person is brand new. And just when I thought that, I've been in open source communities for ages now. No, this is an entirely brand new community. So getting to know more companies and more people and understanding what are they coming from. Or one of the talks that keynotes that Pedro gave earlier talked about why certain individuals or certain kind of demographics, especially in Latin America, do not contribute to open source because the workdays are longer. It's hard to volunteer for unpaid work. Or Angela, how she talked about the code of conduct and the importance of code of conduct, and more importantly, the incident response training that we need to have in open source. Every time I attend these conferences, I learn something new, a lot new, and I meet a lot of new folks as well. Like the Oreo analogy that Jim, he used in his keynote this morning for open source licensing. That was mind-blowing. Like, I've always known about open source licensing, but now I will never forget the Oreo cookie analogy.
Right.
The other huge or personal reason that I attend these conferences, at least especially today, was to get the validation that marketing is the critical piece. Like, it's so natural for most organizations or companies to undermine marketing that we as marketers sometimes feel a little diffident and lack of self-confidence that we end up having. And attending these conferences, at the session, I had a ton of questions. After the session, we literally had to come out of the room so that the next speaker could go on, but there was a whole discussion outside as well as to the nuances of open source marketing versus enterprise marketing. So kind of that discussion also gave me a lot of thought into, yes, it's not an uncommon problem. It is a very common problem. Most times we focus on the technologies when it comes to open source conferences, but marketing is a very undervalued and undermined function. So I'm definitely enjoying today.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Why do you think marketing, why do you think it's so hard to just find, I guess, marketing talent? Not just finding marketing talent, but why do you think marketing has been so difficult? Because it's not just difficult in the open source space, but marketing is difficult in many other spaces as well. Why do you think it is something that's so difficult to understand and grasp for certain people? And how can how can that change, I guess? And like, how are you contributing to the changes in that as we
Oh man, wish I had the slides that I used in the in my talk. There are so many sub-functions within marketing, right? Specialized product marketing, technical marketing, brand design, creative design, analyst relations, specialist. I could go on. There's like 15 or 20 different sub-functions within a marketing group. Not everyone understands the nuances of these or the criticality of each of these roles. One example I gave was when, as an open source project, we had to put out a press release. Yes, we worked with CNCF because CNCF had that responsibility to push out the press release, but we needed to work with the analyst relations and press relations team to identify the journalists and analysts to brief so that they would write their articles and publish it at the same time the press release went out from the CNCF side. And we had to brief a number of industry experts. We had to work with the design team to put the content together. And at the company that I worked at back then, we also had to make sure that that design kind of stayed true or closer to our company's identity as well, because that project was, the company was behind that project. So we also wanted to tie in the company brandings in a very subtle way so that it doesn't look like the company's press release, but the open source press release. So it's kind of understanding all those different delicate aspects and all of those sub-functions of marketing team working together to put something out that may look like, oh, it's just a press release and a blog post. What have you done? But there's so much thought behind each of those efforts. Kind of like engineering, right? You have development. You say development, but there are different streams of developers, different responsible. And then there's the QE team that focuses on the quality assurance and everything, quality testing and everything. So it's for a layperson, it may look like, oh, you all are just one engineering team, but there's nuances of within the engineering team. Similarly, in the marketing team as well, we have nuances. And it's especially hard in open source marketing because we have all been traditionally or from the old times, we have been trained to sell. Marketing teams' metrics are always about the number of leads generated, revenue contribution, MQLs and SQLs, like marketing qualified and sales qualified leads. When it comes to open source marketing, the mindset has to change. We have to think about project growth and community contributions. How many champions are we building? How many ambassadors are we building? How many end users are adopting our project? And then we need to transition the conversation into, is the time right for us to talk about enterprise features now with this particular end user, or is it later? Because we cannot start selling soon to the end user. They will lose interest and move on. Or if it's too late, we will not get any business out of it or like any revenue out of it. So it's kind of a missed opportunity or lost opportunities. Sometimes competitors can take advantage of that missed opportunity as well. So it's kind of understanding the delicate balance of when is the right time to introduce enterprise features. So open source or the open core companies who have an open source version of the product and then sell enterprise features on top of it have this extremely challenging position.
That is so true.
Yeah.
One last question.
Yep.
For people who are in the open source community, how can they keep up with some of the work you're doing? And also, how could they possibly connect with you in the future?
I'm on LinkedIn. I could say Twitter as well, SK Podila, but I'm rarely there these days. I'm on Mastodon Social, same SK Podila. So LinkedIn, Mastodon, Twitter, anywhere.
Cool. You're here. Thank you guys, or thank you so much, Swarna. And thank you guys for joining us. Truly been a pleasure.
Thank you. Yeah.